6:30 tonight. Welcome. We have a lot of new faces here. You know, HOT government. HOT is an acronym for Honest, Open, Transparent Government. Basically, we are a public watchdog group. And some people have likened us as a hive of hornets that sting. Well, you know, I guess if you're on the opposite side of what we're trying to push for agendas, I think that's an accurate description. So we'll do our grand finale tonight, which is our guest speaker, Robin Voss. So let's hear it for Mr. Voss.
Hello, a little bit about me. My name is Robin Voss. I represent the 63rd Assembly District. In Wisconsin, there are 99 legislative seats in the Assembly. Of course, there's 33 in the State House. I represent Mount Pleasant, which would be basically west of Highway 31, Sturtevant, and then basically going out Highway 11, including Rochester, Burlington, Dover, Yorkville, Union Grove. How many of you actually live in that area? Okay, so we have 5 people. Okay, 5 people. I'm sorry, 6. Okay, 6. Who actually
Another
live?
one, 7.
Yeah.
That's in the back.
I'm sorry, 7. That's good.
Yep.
Yep. So that's the people that I represent. So the people that I listen to, the ones that I call back, the folks that I am responsive to are the people who live in my district. I get probably in the course of an average week, depending on the topic, somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 emails from people all around the state. That's okay. So what are the things that you would like me to cover that I can write down and that I can go through and I can try to answer your questions? Sure, yeah, go
The
ahead.
voting machines being used,
Okay. Voting machine.
how honest are they?
Okay. Yep.
Machinery row.
Machinery row. You and I know what that is. Okay, anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
The cyber forensic audit that you're
Okay.
proposing. The difference between that and the investigation that Judge Gableman
Sure.
started to do, and then transparency during the audit.
This is a big trout.
Once the audit is done and the investigation takes place, will those individuals that have been involved in any type of nuisance, for lack of a better term, will penalties be imposed?
Okay.
And I also understand you were on Newsmax and you said you'd be hiring cyber ninjas.
I did say that.
You did?
I did
You
that.
did? Okay.
Yep.
So then how will the cyber forensic audit be conducted? What's
Okay.
the scope of the cyber forensic audit?
Okay, got that? Yes.
So can you give us an update on the progress of the convention of states and maybe some insight into the chance of success in the Senate?
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Why did we start out with investigators first?
Sure.
Okay.
What was that question?
Why do we start out with investigators first? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
The mandates, the government is supposed to be there to protect the individual liberties of Americans, and why aren't they doing that?
So which mandates are you like? You mean like vaccine mandates,
Yes,
masks, and all that?
and the
Okay,
masks.
sure. So I'll talk about vaccine mandates. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Did you sign the subpoenas already for Janelle?
Did I what? No,
Did you sign-
subpoenas. No. Yeah.
And why?
Sure. Okay.
I thought of another one, the Zuckerberg money.
Yep. Good one. Okay.
One more question on
Yeah,
the
sure.
cyber audit. With Janelle's plan, I'll just comment, I think that it's pretty thorough, but there seems to be some room for improvement. Do you have any improvements that you would be adding to the Janelle's
I
plan?
would put down cyber audits changes.
Maybe the scope of work and what you anticipate.
Sure. Yes, sir.
Yeah, where do you, as the speaker, get authority to hire an investigator and not go through the committee, I guess, the elections committee?
Okay. Yes.
I would like to know if you've watched the Maricopa County summary that was released that went through a lot of the findings that they found thus far in their audit.
Okay. Yes.
The how you feel about the integrity of the Constitution being upheld with the mask mandates and the pending jab mandates.
Okay.
A little out of scope, but what are your options and what would be your plans in regards to Afghanistan?
Oh my goodness. That I'm just going to pause you right there. I'm not in Congress. I can give you my opinion, but it would be no different than probably anybody else in the room. So if I have tons of time, I will come back to that.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, I'm sorry.
I guess one of the questions I have is why did we see Sharpies at the voting booths this year? The other thing is I'm new to this. I've never been to a meeting like this, but how can we help and get involved? I don't know what that actually means,
Sure.
but and then also how can the news and our government be trying to mandate masks and the vaccines when they both violate every aspect of the Nuremberg Code? So, and you may not be able to answer that tonight, but the vaccines and the masks, they violate all 10 requirements of the Nuremberg Code.
Okay. I'll just put that under integrity of the Constitution.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
What's the difference between an outside forensic audit and a forensic audit, and why?
Okay, so maybe definition of forensic audit. Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, in relation to her question, how does that with, Afghanis coming to Fort McCoy, if they don't get the shots, what do we get?
Okay.
Can we all talk louder so everybody in the room can hear?
Yep, I got it though.
I echo in here. I mean,
so Afghan refugees requirements. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
So reading from Wisconsin State Statute 6.855 subsection 1, it talks about no site may be designated that affords an advantage to any political party. We were talking about voting sites, drop boxes. Do you agree that these drop boxes placed throughout Democrat-controlled cities during the 2020 election afforded an advantage to one party over the other?
Okay, drop boxes, I'll put that down. Okay. Yes.
I have a question. If we do go to an audit, I think it's pretty important to find out how many counties have already been visited, have the Dominion machines that have already been visited to have their machines serviced between the election and before we do the audit. We need to find that information out.
Okay.
Because we may not get the same results.
Okay.
Is there any consensus or movement by the leadership of the Wisconsin State Senate to review the federal government and exert states' rights over the defiance of the Constitution?
So you mean like Convention of States?
I'm talking about whether symbolically or with resounding voices, shouting out loud, no, you cannot defy the Constitution, and tell people that they cannot do this, they cannot do that, they cannot pursue happiness, they cannot assemble for church, they cannot do these other things. Stand up with resounding voices. Is there any consensus or leadership movement to resoundingly speak out against the encroachment on our beloved Constitution?
I'll start with that as soon as I take the last question, and I'm going to try to go through this group, which will probably take me a while. Yes,
Just curious what your plan is to try and reinstate some confidence in the voting system.
Sure.
A lot of us have lost confidence.
Okay. I'll try to take them kind of in groups, so I don't jump all over the place, if that's okay with everybody. So let's first start with what we are doing to make sure that we have confidence again in the system and where the legislature is standing on it. So it seems like forever ago, but you go back to February of 2020, before the last election, when we began to deal with coronavirus as a whole. I will say for the first 6 to 8, maybe even the first 3 months, it was a huge issue that probably nobody really knew what to do. So I think that in the beginning, we tried to give a great deal of latitude to local officials and to the governor to say, okay, we don't know exactly where things are, let's take some time to try to figure this out. But you will recall that Senator Fitzgerald and I at the time actually led the legislature in suing Governor Evers to overturn the Safer at Home order. So I understand that if you look back and you say, what in our history has been the biggest encroachment on our individual liberty? To me, it was when the citizens of the state indirectly gave unilateral power to Governor Evers to make choices for all of us, whether they were or were against the Constitution. I think that was inherently wrong. No one individual should ever have the ability to unilaterally make choices for all of us. That's why our Constitution has 3 separate but co-equal branches of government. In my opinion, and I have said this publicly over and over, the most important and the strongest branch should always be the legislature, because that is the one that is the closest to the people. You have an opportunity to actually elect and talk to and converse with the 99 members in the Assembly, the 33 members of the Senate. It is much less likely to do that with the executive branch. It's not Governor Walker, Governor Evers, doesn't matter who it is. The executive branch should be secondary. But unfortunately, in our system, it has happened over the past 100 years. We have seen a very gentle and gradual giving of power from the people, which is what I consider the legislature, to the executive branch. It's been wrong. You might also recall that I led the effort in 2019 after Governor Walker lost to take that power back from the executive branch and put it in the legislature where we have the right to do that. If we had not done that, we would have had a weakened position when we sued under Governor Evers' Safer at Home order to actually get that repealed. We do something with the rules process where the legislature now has a much greater authority over the rules that are dictated by Governor Evers. It's why when, if you remember Andrea Palm, that name, Andrea Palm, under a different set of the statutes, actually put out the masking requirement and all of the Safer at Home things because it didn't go through the rule process that I helped to create in 2019. It was found unconstitutional by the state Supreme Court. So I think on almost every topic, the state legislature here in Wisconsin is at the forefront of fighting for our individual liberties. It's why we don't have a masking requirement in Wisconsin, because again, we filed a court brief. A private citizen had to bring that. We could not bring that suit. Somebody else actually had to do that. We filed an affidavit in support of that suit because we agreed with the principles, but didn't have the standing in court to actually do it. Because when Andrea Palm and Governor Evers issued the order, they specifically exempted the legislature, so we would not be able to sue. So I think in
Can they do that?
they did that under the administrative rule process. It was in their power because
How
they.
did the legislature let them have that power to do that?
Well, we didn't let them.
How did you give it to them? Because somebody had to give it to them.
No, they just took it, which is why we then went to court and said we don't agree with their taking of this power. And we then had the ability to file an affidavit and get it over.
So they don't have that power to do that?
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
They shouldn't have been able to take that, period.
Yep. A lot of things happened way before I got elected. Right? I mean, so we are trying to fix these things. But remember, let's just remember the key argument that if any single law in the state of Wisconsin wants to be changed, it takes the legislature to vote for it and a governor to sign it. Every single thing that we do requires the signature of the governor. So people somehow think that I just have the unilateral power to make changes or to do things. I do not, right? Nor does any legislator.
Okay, but what about the corporations picking up the ball where the government can't do it and going ahead and becoming a de facto lawmaker?
Companies are saying that they're going to fire their employees unless they sign this
So
document.
I'll
saying
put that on
they're
there.
gonna-
So this is, I'd really like to try to get through all the questions that people
sir.
have, because or else it ends up being on one topic and all of a sudden
Yeah.
we're at an hour, right? So I want to try to be respectful, which is why I found this is better
Yeah.
to try to write the questions down. Quick comment, Paul.
Very briefly, what does it take to override a veto here in the state?
Yep. So it takes 2/3 of each chamber, 99 members. It takes 67 legislators to override in the Assembly. If we override, then the Senate has to do the same thing with 22 members. There are 21 Republicans in the Senate, so we are 1 short. And there are 61 Republicans in the State Assembly. We are 6 votes short. So what we have tried to override Governor Evers dozens of times and have not succeeded once. The Democrats always stick together.
Yes, I got a proposal for a state law. Governor Evers vetoed the bill that allowed private funding of elections, and
That outlawed.
yeah, that outlawed.
I'm sorry, you said, yeah.
Thank you for correcting me. So my proposal is that you submit another law, this time that any money, private money, goes to the state, and the state distributes the money on a per capita or per vote basis as they do for HAVA and the CARES Act.
That is such a good idea. That's actually the bill that we passed.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that's what he vetoed. That's what he vetoed.
Yeah.
So yeah. So,
I
second
got
thing.
one more.
Yep.
FOIA, open records request.
Yep.
I mean, Wisconsin is in the dark ages when it comes to the open records request. For example, Illinois, you submit a Freedom of Information request, they have 5 days, they can get an automatic extension. In New York, if you submit a Freedom of Information request, if it's just something from a database, they have to respond in 24 hours. Yeah, I've been waiting 14 months for some of my Freedom of Information open records requests here in Wisconsin.
So you are correct. In Wisconsin, we do not have a timeline for how quickly there is. I don't quote me on it, but there is wording in the statute that it has to be timely. I don't know what the exact wording is, but it doesn't set a deadline like that.
Well, you have power to submit a timeline, and
we have talked. I'll be honest. We have talked about that. The challenge that we have right now is that the left uses open records as a weapon. Okay. So what happens is when so let's just say right now you decided to send an email to my office saying, please send me all documents that deal with voting integrity. Okay. We then have to do an estimate, and we put together the entire document to say, okay, how long would it take my staffer to go and research, they have to go through all the paper in my office, they have to go through every single thing to be able to find all the documents. Now, we then send it back to you saying, geez, it's going to be $300 in copying fees and time or whatever it is. Now, I have wasted an entire day or two looking for that information to have you say, I really don't want to pay anything for it. It was just my way to get you to use up your time so you're not ruining the state. Which is the challenge that we have to find a balance, because if you look at my office and most legislators, I respond to open records requests almost always within the same business week. Now, if it's a huge request, it might be longer. I got to be honest, it takes longer. The administration and a lot of what Governor Evers does, it is months and months to be able to get stuff out of them. So I am very sympathetic, because we have the same problem. When we do open records requests on agencies, as we do our investigative work and our committee process, it is very hard to get that information out.
well, you say.
So I'm going to put you on this list,
Yeah, you say
and I'm
the
going to keep
left
going.
uses the
Yeah.
weapon, but the right should use it too.
We try.
Information is very valuable.
Oh, I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you. Okay, second thing. So I'm going to go down this list. How do we restore confidence in voting? I'm going to keep that at the bottom, because that's kind of what we're going to hopefully talk about. So let's talk about voting machines, cyber forensic audit, auditing in general. Okay. So every state in the country has some kind of an auditing function. Okay. In a lot of states around the country, they actually elect a state auditor who is responsible for going through the finances of the state to make sure that checks weren't written to the wrong person, or that money's not being stolen, that the books are balanced at the end of the fiscal year. Okay, Wisconsin does not have an elected state auditor. We have an auditor that's housed inside the Legislative Audit Bureau. All right, so come on in. State statute, and this was passed decades ago. I think it was in the early 1970s. We created something called the Legislative Audit Bureau. Okay, there are basically two different kinds of audits. All right, you have a programmatic audit and you have a financial audit. Okay, the financial audit is the one where you look at all the numbers and make sure that they all add up in the correct columns. A programmatic audit is where you look at how any program functions and determine whether or not it's being run the best, if it's following state law, if it's actually going through the entire process. Okay. So our auditors in Wisconsin, we have an audit bureau with about 90 auditors who do this as their full-time job. It is all they do. Okay, they do our they do our fiscal audit, but most of their time is spent on these programmatic audits. Okay, you can go right now onto the legislature's website and go just type in Wisconsin Legislative Audit Bureau, and you will see every audit they have done for the past 5-10 years. And you will also see any audits that we have in progress and the scope statement that's decided, all right? There's an email going around that contains a ton of misinformation about how the process actually works, all right? I, as the speaker, do not have the power to order an audit in any way whatsoever, okay? I cannot order a programmatic audit. I cannot order a fiscal audit, okay? I get the right, as speaker, to appoint one of 2 co-chairs from the legislature to chair the legislature's audit committee, okay? I don't quote me on the exact number. I believe that there are 6 from each house, 4 Republicans, 2 Democrats in the Assembly, 4 Republicans, 2 Democrats in the Senate. So that group of people meets as the state's audit committee, all right? The 2 audit co-chairs, Samantha Kirkman, my colleague from Kenosha County, right here south of us. The Senate chair is Rob Coles, okay? So when the auditors come in and say, we want to look at how unemployment works because we think there are changes that need to be made, what will happen a lot of times is legislators will find a problem in an agency or in some way that part of state government works. They will send a letter to the 2 audit co-chairs saying, we think you should schedule a programmatic audit to review how this part of state government works to make it better, okay? So we did an audit, and you can go on there and read right now, unemployment insurance. It is a huge mess, totally screwed up by Governor Evers and his staff, literally mismanagement from top to bottom, so bad that he asked his own secretary to resign because it was so poorly managed. Okay, a lot of that was because of the good work that was done by the Legislative Audit Bureau to go in, to dig in, to find out the problems that they were having, and we exposed those to the public, okay? So I can send a letter, and I obviously, as the person who appoints the chair, I have influence over it, but they make the decision on what audits to do, okay? So they made a decision in February, at our request, to do an audit of election processes in Wisconsin, okay? I'm sure many of you have seen the scope statement it's called, but that is the committee gets together and they brainstorm to say what should be included in the programmatic audit for whatever function it would be. So I brought some copies along, if you haven't already seen it, where this is the scope statement that the legislature put out February 8th, okay? And that talks about all the things that they are going to investigate, and they have been investigating, okay? Right now, there are approximately 20 to 25 auditors who have been working since February on doing a programmatic audit on the way elections function all throughout the state of Wisconsin, okay? Now, because we want to make sure that it is independent and that it is non-biased, the statutes require that it has to be totally private until the results are announced. They can't just kind of dribble it out a little bit at a time to make somebody look good or to make somebody look bad. So I know people are frustrated and saying, why aren't we hearing about this audit? Why aren't we seeing all the data that's being collected? Because the data will be released when the complete report is done. Okay, that is supposed to be sometime this fall. But again, if it's going to take them a little bit of extra time to make sure they get a complete, thorough, programmatic audit, I think that's a good thing. I don't want to rush them to be able to then say that the audit was incomplete because people will then say that that is unfair. So the auditors, that's the forensic audit that we are doing. Now, the next question is, tell me the definition of a forensic audit. Okay?
Can you back up? I just want to ask about what that audit bureau is looking at. Will they also be looking at the Dominion machines themselves?
If you read the scope statement, we do not have the ability beyond the scope statement, which is voted on by the committee, to direct them to do anything, right? They are independent and they take and follow the facts wherever they can lead.
So we wouldn't know if that's what...
Not until the report comes out. Not until the report comes out.
When are they due?
It's supposed to be out by this fall. So, yeah. Now, I'll tell you, that's actually speedy. Because when they do one of these programmatic audits, they really dive into the details to try to make sure that they do a good job. Because again, these are professionals. This is what they do for a living. They usually take up to a year to do an audit. So they started in February. They're going to have it out by October. So that'll be approximately 7 to 8, 9 months, somewhere in there. Yep.
I guess I have a question because it says that the audit could examine issues pertaining to. So to me, as a statement of work of what they're doing, it's kind of wide open as to what they're doing. Mm-hmm. So do they stay within this, or do they add things, and how do we find out if they added other procedures that they were monitoring?
They are required to stay within the scope statement unless they discover along the way new things. Then they go to the co-chairs and say, hey, we thought that it was going to be this scope of work, but we actually found this area we'd like to concentrate more time on. And the co-chairs can give them the ability to go in a similar but kind of a corollary direction.
Do they publish that when they change?
They only do it at the end.
Only at the end.
Yep, but that's once again, that's by law. They are not allowed to do it, period. Okay. All right, so the definition of a forensic audit and what that means. There is a lot of misinformation as to what a definition of a forensic audit means. Some people believe it means a hand count of the ballots like they're doing in Arizona. Other people believe it means like taking a computer expert and going in there. The actual definition of a forensic audit means that it can be admitted in court. That is it. When you say I'm doing a forensic audit, that means that if they find any kind of charges or things that are wrong, they can refer that to a district attorney or to the prosecutor to actually then charge somebody with a crime for having done something that they discovered in the audit. That is all forensic means. It does not mean a specific style. It doesn't mean a person who does it. It doesn't mean a way of doing it. It just means somebody can be charged by a prosecutor.
So is that the difference between an outside forensic audit? Which are we doing in Wisconsin?
So outside, it's not really, so if I understand correctly, when somebody says outside, that is who is paying for it.
Or a third party that's not internal.
It could be, but so yeah, okay, let's take an example. Let's say the city of Racine. If the city of Racine decided to do an audit of their election processes, and I know, I'm just making an example, just saying, right? But the clerk decided that she was going to audit the process, that would be an internal audit, right? Because it's a person who's in the department doing it. If the state of Wisconsin came in and said, we're going to take our professional audit bureau and we're going to audit the process, that would be an outside audit.
Okay.
Okay.
So as it relates just for like cyber ninjas, that's considered an outside audit because they're not a part of the government.
Correct. Now the interesting thing is, because they are not licensed and regulated to do it, what they discover, many people believe, will not be a forensic audit. To say, this is what I found, give it to a prosecutor, they can charge the person.
So is there anyone licensed to do a forensic audit?
Yes, the state of Wisconsin does licensing of like CPAs and auditors, people like that. So that's why we have people who are in our audit bureau that are totally legit.
Yep. What if we don't trust the people that you have? What if we want an independent? I mean, that doesn't make sense because it runs deep. You know, this corruption runs deep, and you know it, I know it, we know it.
And it's on both sides, unfortunately.
You know, if you're going internal, that...
Well, we're not doing internal.
Well, we would perceive the audit bureau as being internal.
Yeah, but and again, here's what I would say. If they did not have a 50-year track record of going into every single part of state government, and once again, read for yourself. Go home tonight, go to Google, and type in Wisconsin Audit Bureau, and you will read all the reports where they go into different parts of state government and say, there's corruption here. This program is being run incorrectly. This person should be charged. That's what they do. Right. So I mean, if it was a brand new person coming in where they had no experience whatsoever, I would trust that person less. Because how do I know they're not doing it just because somebody's funding? And actually, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal yesterday talking about what's happening in Arizona. And one of the things that is being charged by the Democrats is that the auditors that they hired, they're not even auditors, the investigators that they hired are simply doing what the people who are paying the bills want. Right? So I want something when we find what happened in this election and they say there was corruption here or there was fraud there, I want to be able to charge people and refer it to the district attorney so that they go to jail. That can't happen in Arizona because the people that are doing it aren't the taxpayers. Right? So I want to make sure people pay a price. I don't want to just do it for window dressing.
But you have 50 years worth of history with this forensic audit team that you have.
Yeah.
But where are the charges for just the unemployment scam and the masks that you guys just uncovered? I mean, who gets charged? Who goes to jail? Like, we don't see that. It seems like the people that are committing the crimes get away with anything. We jaywalk or we speed and we get smacked down.
Sure.
And that's got to stop. So we're here today to tell you to take it back to the rest of the Wisconsin Senate and Assembly to tell them that you guys have to be accountable to us, to we the people.
Yeah.
And we the people have had it up to here with, you know, like, where are the charges?
Well,
With the unemployment mess. I mean, you just said it was forensically audited.
Yep.
And it was a mess from top to bottom. After that, you should have followed up with, and this person was charged, this person, you know, or we had 5.
We don't, but let's just remember, and sometimes, you know, let's just go back to Schoolhouse Rock, okay? And like the basic functions of each branch of government. As a legislator, I have zero power to charge anybody with anything.
So then your audit team
Yep.
have zero power right now over these elections, which is what you're telling me.
No.
When they come back, you're saying, oh, then we gotta go to the then we gotta go to the judicial branch, which.
Not the judicial branch, no, it's not. So let me just finish. Let me
Okay,
explain to you
but
how it happens.
you're saying it's not gonna ever happen.
No, that's not what I said, no. So the legislature passes laws, right? We have the power to investigate. That's the 2 powers the Constitution grants us, right? We have the power to investigate and hold the power of the purse. We appropriate funds. And we have the power to pass laws, ultimately, hopefully signed by a governor. We have a third power, which is part of lawmaking, which is this rule process, where we get to kind of work on the agencies and kind of making sure that they follow what the statutes say. But let's assume that the Audit Bureau finds that people committed a crime, okay? And they do that. They refer those for prosecution to a district attorney or to the attorney general. We in the Constitution, I don't have the power to prosecute anybody.
Well, I know that, but nobody seems to get prosecuted. So if nobody got prosecuted out of this big mess of unemployment that you're saying that you guys found and uncovered, and it was such a great thing, how do we have any kind of faith that your audit team is going to find anything that's going to come out of it where we can actually get change?
Yeah.
Because people committed treason in this audit.
Right.
And your
not
job,
in the audit.
Or not in the audit, but in the election.
Yep.
But it is the Senate and the Assembly's job
To expose it.
to expose it.
That's our only job. We have the power to expose it. That is what investigation does. That is what our power to bring light to the topic does.
You have the power to be
So
certified.
you're
too.
saying
No,
you
we
guys
don't.
can expose it, but then it's up
We cannot.
to these,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say, we actually have almost a RICO act going, well, we do have a RICO act going in Racine and going, you know, statewide, where we can't get justice because we get caught up in court.
So I'm going to
after
keep
court.
going down my list. This is why it's super hard, because I want to have a conversation, I want to answer questions, but I want to also try to be respectful and get to all the things people brought
The
up.
thing is you have to help us understand how we can trust this forensic audit that never seems to produce any criminals or any change. And something has to change out of the last election.
But there's a difference between producing change and producing charges, right? So we already produce change in unemployment. I mean, you might not know it because the newspapers cover a small snippet of what we do. But we made pretty dramatic changes to the way that unemployment operates, nowhere near enough. We actually have another proposal we're going to bring out later this fall that'll be much more dramatic based on some of the things we found in the audit. Because again, the only way that the legislature has the power to change anything is by convincing the legislature to pass a law and the governor to sign it.
We have a very, very broken government. Wisconsin's broken along with, I'm going to say, the 49 other states. And our federal government's broken. So we, the people, are telling you you have to fix this.
I agree. That's why, I believe in our republic. I believe in it very, to the bottom of my heart. I'm not doing it for the money. I'm not doing it for the glory. I'm doing it because I love our country, right? And I think that's probably why most people are here tonight. Well, how do you make change? The number one way you make change is by electing the right people. Number one, right? And number two is making sure that you try to hold people accountable. I'm just saying.
We don't trust
the election. I understand.
Only one person at a time, please.
Yep. So that's why, let me just keep going, and I'll keep answering the questions, and that's what I'm trying to do the best I can, okay?
My dear Speaker, I think what you are hearing from the American people is time for frivolities and little things is over.
We want
The
an
people
external.
are angry beyond belief. Grandfathers and fathers are scared that their children are going to grow up in a socialist, communist country, and we have watched as our politicians have stayed quiet. We are angry, and that's what you're hearing. So while we are glad that you want to quickly get through all of these questions, we are hopping mad. My opinion is, if you don't have mechanisms, then maybe what needs to happen is we need to demand the resignation of our local officials to be voted on post haste and replace them with new local officials.
Yes.
Not just one, but all of them.
Should have worn my shirt.
I mean, down to the school board.
Down to the school boards.
Yes.
That's how hopping mad these people are. And y'all are losing touch with these American people, how really on edge this is. I have a father who's a Vietnam veteran who frankly feels that our president should be shot for aiding and abetting the enemy and for leaving a man behind. I'm talking about, that's the fervor. They have defied the Constitution when they said that churches could not assemble.
Yes.
That is in the Constitution. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, nor prohibiting the free exercise thereof. We are hot. And while I appreciate all that you're doing in coming and answering questions, I'm just, from the bottom of our hearts, I don't care who certifies these people who do this audit. I want to know who puts that stamp of approval. What's the difference between somebody who gets a stamp of approval from corrupt politicians to be an auditor and cyber ninjas who is paid by the people to do the audit? You mean to tell me it takes 10 months to do this audit when it usually or used to take 1 day to count the votes properly? Until we introduced a machine and submitted the people's vote to outside interests.
Where a password isn't even known by the clerk of courts.
Keys to the counting center are held by an attorney.
County clerk.
Okay, let's move on.
Mr. Speaker, two ladies' questions.
Yeah.
Who holds the DOJ accountable to do their job? Because that gets to the core of exactly what we're talking about. And if it all rests with the DOJ, and we have seen the actions of the DOJ with Patricia Hansen here in the scene, with Josh Call at the state level, and they don't do their job, who holds them accountable?
The voters.
But not with the.
But they can't be charged for not doing their job.
We have no confidence.
Determined by
Because
dominion.
this man right here is absolutely right. The people demand accountability of this.
Right, I agree. So that's the whole reason, so let's just take a step back and look at our election process in Wisconsin and why, for the flaws that are inherent in it, and there are flaws in our election process, okay? Our election process is different than every other state. That is one of the powers that was given to us in the U.S. Constitution, and that is every state determines their own election law. If you remember, H.R. 1, the federal government, the Democrats in Congress are trying to take that power away so that the federal government will run all of our elections, okay? Which is why that is one of the most important things we have to make sure we defeat, so that Wisconsin can be different than Arizona or Illinois or Delaware or wherever else, okay? So in Arizona, they run their elections by county. So you see the recount that's happening in Arizona right now. It's being done in Maricopa County. The county's doing it, okay? Something like 90%, I think it's 89% of their voters live in a single county, okay? That is not Wisconsin. Wisconsin runs our elections at the local municipal level. So there are 1,852 different locations where there is a clerk who runs the election. Okay, that's who does it. So in the city of Racine, city clerk. Village of Rochester, village clerk. Right? Independent individuals who run the elections. So the ability in Wisconsin for somebody to get 1,852 people to be part of a cabal to steal an election is impossible, right? You cannot get 2,000 people together to steal an election without
The
somebody.
CCP has 300,000 Chinese students, and a third of them are assets of the PLA.
But we're not China, right?
No,
we are
we're
in the
not,
United
but we're
States.
moving towards it, sir.
But we're not right now with our elections, okay? So we have 1,852 different people running the elections, okay? We also, unlike other states, we have paper ballots that every single voter fills out. In other places, you go in and you push a button on a machine. There is no paper ballot, there is no paper trail, okay? We have paper ballots that are scanned in. In other places, they don't retain a copy in the memory of the computer of the actual physical ballot that goes in there. Wisconsin does that. So we have a triple check system where you have the paper ballots that can be recounted, you have the Scantron that can be analyzed, and you have the ultimate results that are produced by the machine, okay? So remember, President Trump paid for a hand recount in both Dane and Milwaukee counties. So they took the actual paper ballots and counted the paper ballots in those two counties. You remember that happened in the spring? Cost the president something like $2.7 million because they had to hand recount those.
Who counted them?
Volunteers and people who are the poll workers. So remember, poll workers in Wisconsin are us,
Yeah.
right? There's nobody who is paid to be a poll worker year-round.
No, the mayor here, he manipulated the poll workers in this town.
That is true, and that's
And
different.
the mayor here
Yep.
put pressure on that city clerk.
Yep, totally
to
agree.
sign away.
But that happened in more places than this scene. And if you look at the Wisconsin
Agreed.
vibe,
Yeah.
then that's enough to swing the election. So if we need to do a forensic audit and a detailed audit of everything that you just said, count ballots, look at the machines, look at all the images, you know, and do it at least in those 5 cities.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then decide where we need to go from there.
So let's
But
just,
I don't know why we just can't do it.
so that's part of the process that we're working through, okay? So let's just remember, and that's why it's important, because I call constituents back almost every day. I won't say every day, but almost every day. And there is so much misinformation out there because people read something on Facebook or they saw what's happening on Fox News in another state. Or OAN or Newsmax, it doesn't matter, right? People see something on television in another state and assume that must be happening here in Wisconsin, okay? Oftentimes, it is not, because every state, thank goodness, is different than the ones that are around us, okay? So we do not have countywide elections. We do not have the same system that they do in other places where they don't have paper ballots. So it's just important for us to accept there are certain things that are different about Wisconsin that the legislature, frankly, under Governor Walker and before that under Governor Thompson, put all these things into effect. You realize in a lot of places around the country they don't even have photo ID, right? We do have photo ID. So we do have photo ID.
But we also had drop
So
boxes.
why don't they ask for it?
They are required to
And I'm
ask.
going to say thanks to you,
Yeah.
we have drop boxes.
Yeah,
And
no.
that's unconstitutional. Did you approve them?
No, we never approved that.
No, that's
Wait.
WEC.
Yeah.
Well-
And that, by all means, needs to get changed too. That's
Yep.
just-
So, but this is what I'm saying. I feel like this is part of the reason I wanted to be here to answer the questions and go through the list, is because there's so much misinformation out there. There's a lot of things that were done wrong in the election, and that's what we want to get to the bottom of. But some of the things that people are bringing up are just flat out wrong. So that undermines the credibility of all the things that actually were done incorrectly when people throw out things that in 15 seconds can be disproven because they're absolutely not true. So I want to focus on the things that I know were done wrongly in Wisconsin that need to change, that we have to build public support for, so that we can either pressure people to switch their minds and vote with us when we pass laws, or we have the ability to put pressure on local elected officials to ensure that they follow the law that we voted for that is on the books today. Okay, that's the only power that we have, and it's really to raise our voices and make sure things get better. So that's why we're doing these audits. That's why I hired Justice Galeman, because I want to do everything we can to create a body of evidence that can explain to the people why things were done wrong, and they have to change. So when people talk about certain things, they're undermining our credibility. As an example, in the state of Wisconsin, the voting machines do not connect to the internet.
Oh,
Yes,
they do.
They do.
Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
They do not. Okay? You can believe it if you want to.
If they have a Wi-Fi.
They don't have Wi-Fi. They do not have Wi-Fi.
Do they have
Doesn't
USB?
What about Mike
No.
Lindell's information?
So
I talked to Mike Lindell.
Yeah, because the
So
state
where-
of Wisconsin, there's a 300,000, they saw passing of 300,000 votes.
No, no.
Or it was
So again-
100,000 or 300,000 votes.
So this is where
Mike
I'm
Lindell's.
telling you, there are certain things that were wrong. The Zuckerberg buck's wrong. Trying to have the election run by people who are not municipal employees, trying to say that we don't need to have election observers at the polling place to guarantee that people on both sides of the aisle get to witness when people cast their ballot. All the things that are out there, those are all wrong, right?
Criminal.
I agree, there's a lot of things that should be criminal. I agree. There, unfortunately, some are and some are not.
Ballot harvesting.
But ballot harvesting, also wrong. I mean, there's a lot of things that we should focus on, but some of them that people are obsessed with, they just aren't accurate.
Okay, but
Right?
I have a question. Where can we get the specs on the voting machines? Is there a central warehouse? Who has a Dominion machine? What the Dominion machine has from a component standpoint, you know, so that we can look at them? And could we as citizens go in and look at the machines and test them? Notably, if there's USB ports that are in there, because certain things can go into USB ports that connect to Wi-Fi remotely.
That's true. That's true, Fabian.
And so how do we get the specs of the machines? How do we understand what was bought within the state that is Dominion?
Yeah.
What models were bought? What comprises those models? Where do we get that information?
Have you?
In the
I don't know the
legislature?
answer to that.
Can you help us?
I'll put it on my list. I will
How do
find
we
out.
find out?
Can I interrupt here for a second? There is an answer to that. It's called Wisconsin Public Records. You're going to have to do that to each clerk in every county or municipality in order to get that. So
Actually, I think WEC might have it.
And
I think the Wisconsin election. I think the Wisconsin election.
So those numbers of all these machines are available, you know, but it
Serial
takes effort to
numbers,
do it.
everything, so
And
we
if
get the
Mr.
serial
Boss
numbers.
is correct that if the WEC has a complete list with serial numbers, then Wisconsin Public Request will identify those machines. Now, there's several different machines being used by different counties all over. Everything isn't Dominion and ESS. But, you know, those records are available somewhere if you want to take the time to dig them up, so. Okay, carry on.
That's okay, yeah. So
would you help us get those?
I mean, I can ask, I can ask WEC for you, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, now, again, focusing on the things that we actually know were committed, that were wrong during the election, I think is stronger when, don't forget, they hand counted the ballots in Milwaukee County, which is a non-Dominion county.
When people were 6 feet away and they really couldn't count.
Don't disagree, I agree, but they did hand
It
count
was wrong.
them, right?
It was done wrong.
You're exactly right, which is why we passed legislation to change that the governor vetoed.
Did they compare it against the machine counts?
Yes.
By individual?
Yeah, there's no way to do it by individual because the ballots are private.
And I don't think that's.
No,
the
by
real issue.
individual, like
We did a canvas.
individual candidate. Did they compare the counts by paper ballot, individual candidate to what the machine said?
Yeah.
They did.
That's what they did.
I don't think that's the real issue, though. I think the issue is those ballots that were sent into the machine that were not legitimate ballots. I think that's what and they're gonna show up on the count and the recount.
That's different, and that's why
I
the
think
people.
this lady is right, because I worked the Obama's second election as a poll worker. At the end of the night, you know, you go into this machine where everybody scans and they're all over the place in there, except for a stack that were perfect like this, sitting at the bottom. All of them, about this thick. One race was voted on, that was the Obama race, and all of them were for Obama.
Well, and the good news is, Paul, that since 2008, we have photo ID. We have put in a ton of safeguards because we saw some of the problems that happened during the Democrats' control, and that's what we did a lot of those intergovernmental.
I was just wondering, since the public obviously has no confidence in the system that we're doing now, why hasn't the legislature immediately put a halt to any kind of electronic tabulation on any device that doesn't have open source reviewable hardware and software? Because it seems ridiculous that we just put it in the magic box and trust what comes out the other end, not even knowing the process, when for hundreds of years we've just counted them by hand. I mean, this seems like we're adding something in that doesn't need to be there, and I don't trust anything that's a magic black box, and I think we should immediately pass legislation to stop the use of anything that we can't look at the entire design from start to finish, because it's ridiculous to do it any other way.
So that's something we certainly consider. I mean, that's not a bad idea. I'll have to think about that. Yeah, I mean, because I don't have, again,
I think that.
But let's just remember.
An emergency order would also be appropriate.
Yeah.
In the time it takes to review it. Because we've got local elections going on all the time.
Right.
And we need to say, look, if the public can't trust this, we just can't use it until we can come to a further review and either pass an official law or whatever.
So I do not know this for a fact, but I had a constituent on the phone today ask me this question, and I asked my staff to research it. They have not gotten me the answer yet. I do not believe that it is a requirement that the city clerk of Racine or the village clerk of Rochester has to use the tabulation numbers from the machine. I believe that if he or she wanted, they could take those ballots out in front of the poll workers, the election inspectors, so you have Democrats and Republicans both there. And I think they could do a hand count. I don't think there's any prohibition from doing that. Now again, let's just be honest about it. Let's say that I propose that legislation. What do you think is going to happen to it when it gets to Governor Evers' desk?
Doesn't matter. Flood his desk.
Correct. I understand what you're saying. If we want to actually make a change that's going to impact the 2022 election,
Force them to make that vote.
we could do that again, but we've done that half a dozen times. And what many of you are saying is the things that I have forced on him, which is to say, you can't ballot harvest. You can't, you have to have election observers that can see the ballot. You have to make sure that you have to have folks that are actually allowed in the nursing home, right? We have people who committed fraud because they didn't allow the election observers to be in there when somebody else cast their ballot. I mean, those are real things. He vetoed every one of those bills. And once again, we sent them to him because it was the right thing. I have no problem with that. But I also want to be honest enough to say that we've got to focus on raising these issues so that the public gets outraged enough beyond this room, which is what our audit's all about, to explain to people why systems need to change so that we can actually get laws put on the books. Because if all you want me to do is go up there and pass a bunch of bills that get vetoed by the governor, I can do that, but it won't change one darn thing. So we got to have a combination of putting pressure on in a lot of ways to change the system for the better.
So I think that one thing that might be good is for you to fill his desk with new bills every single day, whether he wants them or not.
We are doing that. I mean, we do that continually. Yeah, right.
He's just vetoing all of them.
Excuse me?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, H.O.T government submitted an open records request to Racine County that included the contract that Racine County signed with Dominion.
I don't think Racine uses it.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, we do.
We do. I voted on them, Dominion. I even looked at it, we did not discuss it.
Well, whatever the case may be,
Yeah.
I believe that we do. And in that was an invoice for 73 wireless modems to accompany the 73 machines that were purchased. Why would we need wireless modems for these machines?
Especially since we don't do wireless.
Correct. Right. They do not. So I do not know. I have to ask the clerk. You have to ask Wendy. Okay. I know that in the past, the way that they used to have the election data go to the county clerk's office, because I'm sure many of you on election night go to the county clerk and you just keep hitting refresh to see what the ballots cast in every ward are. They literally plug a telephone line in the back and they are modemed in, okay? Which, again, modems between 2 points. It's like a telephone line. It is not connected to the internet. That is the way that they have done it. Now, it is possible. Highly unlikely in 1,852 municipalities across the state when they all do it at a different time with 2 telephone lines.
Doesn't matter if it goes to a system, if it goes to a network, it can be infiltrated. It all is on a network, sir. All of it is on a network. At one level or another, it's on a network, man. Why do we have electronic voting systems? It's a system. It's a system, meaning components thereof. You have your boxes, you have your tabulators, you have your little pads where you sign your name. It's all going into a database or a network infrastructure somewhere along the line, and it can be infiltrated. The air gap stuff is hackable. All of it is.
If you got wireless modems, it can be hacked.
You can use a cell phone outside of this room, and somebody can pipe that cell phone with Bluetooth into this room and then start manipulating people's devices, whether they're on the internet or not.
Even without that, the biggest question is they are connecting to another system of any kind whatsoever. We have a magic black box connecting to an empty, unknown system that's run by one common thing, and that's whoever makes these machines that we can't look at. Now, I trust people who I vote for when they actually get voted for. I trust them. But I don't trust the people who I don't even know from foreign countries that have created this, bought other people's technology that's all closed source. We're not allowed to look at how it works.
So why don't you ask Wendy Christensen to come in and talk? Because I am not, I gotta be honest, I am not an
She has
expert.
been
on
our
this.
guest.
Oh,
Already.
okay.
So, and we just had conversation with her a couple of weeks ago also at the investiture of Shelley Grogan.
Okay. So if they have new technology, I'm sorry, I didn't know that. If they have new technology where they are doing it wirelessly, that's something different. I didn't know that, right? So I only know what I know because, again, I don't run elections. My job is to make sure that we investigate, and that's why we are hiring professionals to do it. Okay?
Can I make one
Yeah.
comment on that?
Yeah.
And I don't mean this to be disrespectful, so I hope it doesn't come off that way.
Yeah.
You're the head of our legislature for the state.
One
and-
house, but yeah.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
But you're confidently telling us they do not connect to the internet. We've done digging, and they do have wireless cards. That concerns me.
But let's, once again, I'm not a computer expert, okay? But the difference is what data they transmit. So if the only thing that transmits is the ultimate results, because I was a poll worker, I have done it in the past when they did the modem thing, they do not transmit the data of the ballots. They only transmitted the final results. So if the final results could be switched, right? So 100 votes for Trump really turns into 100 votes for Biden. I agree, that is a problem.
So saying that you're not in IT, I do actually work in IT. How do you know that that's happening?
Well, that's what we're doing an audit. I mean, we're going to hire people who are a lot smarter than me.
What
who
good is an
understand
audit
technology.
if we don't know how the box works?
But you're assuming that the auditors won't learn how the box works.
Except for Dominion has already gone after places, telling them that you cannot look into this, and even sued counties and states regarding that very thing.
Sure.
We should make sure that until this is settled, we have an immediate ban on any closed source material being used to tabulate any ballots in any election in the state of Wisconsin.
Why wouldn't you take the volunteers who are here and do a hand recount of the 2020 ballots in the city of Racine? I'm just saying, but...
And we're gonna do the county, we wanna do the county.
No, but I'm saying you can start with the city of Racine.
Just hold on. The ballots have not been made available to us. We did ask for access to the ballots, and they were not made available to us.
I believe, who is the custodian of the ballots?
Wendy Christensen.
Right.
Has not gotten the authorization to do that.
Does she have the
Plus she also is going to need city employee or county employees to work with us. So we've asked for them. We have not yet received a date or a time that we can actually look at the ballots. Yeah, go ahead, George.
Robin, we have to go beyond the counting of the ballots. We have to get into finding out which ballots are legitimate.
I agree with that.
And that takes more than just sitting it like Trump did, just counting ballots. If they've been, a bunch of extras been stuffed in there that have no connection to anything but graveyards and empty houses, that's what a real forensic audit does. And that's a lot more than just the people in this room. That's where you get into some real tough investigation.
Well, that's part of what's already being done.
Okay, so who are you hiring for the audit firm? Who's being hired?
That is Justice Gableman's decision. So we tried to take politics out of it. So when we hired Justice Gableman, we wanted somebody to be independent. So I am not going to pick who the firm is. Justice Gableman is.
What kind of a budget is he being given?
It is quite sizable, and it is. I said, give a budget for what you think you need to be successful. He gave the budget, and we approved it.
Okay, is he using Janelle's request for records? Is that the baseline for his? Why not?
Because Janelle is not an attorney. If you watched her interview on Capital City Sunday, she said she basically took it from other places. And again, there's nothing wrong with how they do things in Pennsylvania or Georgia or Arizona, but we're none of those places. I want somebody who is a member of the state Supreme Court, who's an attorney, actually drafting the subpoenas to make sure that they are done correctly, not politically.
I understand that and agree with that, but does he even know what he should be asking for from an audit standpoint? He's an investigator. He's not an auditor. Auditors look for different things when they understand for stuff.
Which is why he has the authority to hire experts to help him, just like Janelle, albeit well-meaning. She is a public relations business owner. She has no experience either. So we shouldn't assume that hers are better than Justice Gableman's. I don't think either one necessarily is an auditor. We need to hire people who are really smart to make sure that they put together the correct subpoenas.
So then this whole thing really hinges on the character of Gableman. Really?
And the audit bureau that I believe are professionals from the legislature. It's both, right? Which is why I wanted to pick, that's why we chose Justice Gableman.
Can we go back to, then why do you have a...
I've heard good things about Gableman.
Why do you have a campaign and elections committee in the assembly?
Why even have that?
Why do you have that? I mean, if you have a campaign and elections committee and you have representatives of we the people in there and they have no say in any of this, how does that represent we the people?
Oh no, they all have to say, I mean, we talked about it at the caucus.
Right.
The whole
but
legislative
you
caucus
have
got together and talked
a
about it.
committee that's designated to that, and you're ignoring the committee essentially by bringing Justice Gableman in. The committee has no input on what they've done and what they're looking for. What's the purpose of the committee then?
So Justice Gableman consults with the committee just like he does with anybody who contacts him because we want it to be the most rigorous and the most, hopefully, wide-ranging investigation that he has.
Okay, but the contract with Justice Gableman was signed by you.
Correct.
But
It
it wasn't signed by the committee. Why wasn't the
Because it can't be.
part of
Does he report directly to you?
The way the legislature works, it is always the presiding officer. A committee chair never signs a contract for anything.
Right, but there seems to be no communication, and I guess from my standpoint, we the people have a committee already that's sitting in there, and it seems like they're sitting on the outside based on what your comments were. Why is that? Why isn't Gableman working directly with them? Why wasn't that part of his objective?
So Gableman is working with them.
Okay.
Once again, I am not directing Justice Gableman. We wanted somebody who is independent because, again, the goal is to get at the truth so that we can use it to convince the public of what actually happened and what needs to change. That's the goal.
But
You can't convince the public anymore. The public are smarter than that.
But Gableman's
Government is just that, to control the mind. We're done with it.
Yeah. Gableman's been you contracted with Gableman on July 1st.
Yep.
I mean, he had a couple of guys quit on him already, and going through that. His scope in there is all investigative. That doesn't do auditing. Auditing gets into the process. Auditing understands the process. He wasn't doing that, so essentially almost 60 days have gone by.
Right, so that's why we have 24 auditors who are working on the auditing function and the programming, and he is doing the investigation, which is what his expertise is. Don't forget, he was a district attorney, then a circuit court judge, then a Supreme Court justice.
Right, but he's not an auditor.
Correct, I agree, because we have 24 auditors doing something different.
So will he be publishing who he hires? Will we know who he hires?
Everything will be public eventually. Yeah.
Robin, can you have some really good information from whether it's Peter Navarro or Matt Bernard or Seth Cashel or Jovan Pulitzer that's really kind of can give us a really good direction of where to go with a forensic audit? Why are we not taking these really experts who've been pretty on point in other states, whether it be Pennsylvania or Arizona? Why aren't we taking some of their advice and just directing an audit going in that direction? I mean, the point, and everybody has really, I think we get it, like, we don't trust a government kind of elected or government appointed group. We're willing, we're bludgeoning money anyway in many different ways, shape, and form. Why not? We want to know from an outside, whether it's cyber ninjas or whatever, we want to know that our elections they're honest and they're run properly, and we want to know what's happened, but we also need to know what happens so we can move forward, because otherwise we can't move forward. This whole there's no 22, there's no 24 without 20. We have to have it. We will never have faith in this government again if we don't resolve 2020. We just won't. And we don't trust what any appointed, this judge might be great. We don't trust them. We don't trust them. There's Soros money going to a candidate for the Burlington School District, one of their, or the Burlington School Board. There's somebody said it runs so deep, and it does. We know that now. We see that. We don't trust it. And I feel like the only way we're going to is if we see an outside, independent, forensic audit conducted. And as much as this judge might be great, and he might point and some, you know, directions that, we're never gonna believe it. We're just not gonna believe it. I hate to say it, but our trust, it's gone. And we're just not gonna believe whatever he says, whether it's this way or that way. We will question it, we will never believe it.
Well,
Just
all
to put it
due
real quickly, any system that could get as bad as it did on this election can also control the investigation of the election.
Yes.
Just so it's going to be hard for us to believe anything that we see that comes from the same system.
I think what everybody's...
So just what they're all telling you, that they're afraid that all this is going to be very quiet, secretive, and then they're going to be given a report, and we're supposed to trust that report. But you know, I think what everybody really wants to see as this investigation moves on, builds, and it becomes truly a real investigation, they'd like to see some reports of where the organization that's doing the investigation is actually proceeding, how they're proceeding. I'm not going to tell you to release secret details of it, but you know, people want some input transparency from our government as we move forward with this. That we'd like to actually get some reports back on it because, you know, well, yeah, I mean, okay, hold on, just so, you know, I think it's important that being that you're the state assembly, you should be looking and working with Mr. Gableman to find a way to release some data as this investigation revs up, and I think people would feel a whole lot better knowing what's really happening rather than just waiting for 90 days or 120 days and just all of a sudden we're supposed to expect this report. So I would suggest to you that you get with Mr. Gableman and get some reports going on how he's building his team, because I know he's got a big team that he's got to build. He's got to use a lot of different resources and a lot of different people. So I think the people are entitled to at least know as he builds his team, as he's moving forward, as the investigation revs up, that people would like to know what's happening. So that's just my...
I'll pass that along.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I think you worded that quite well. What I would like to see personally is a very similar concept to what Maricopa County did, the idea of beyond reproach.
Yeah, because
they had
they're
video
involved.
cameras, there was involvement.
People are involved
I think
in the audit.
that would make a big difference. And may I give you this? May I approach? I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. But that is a summary of all of the issues that I was able to find that have been found in other states, that I think if you asked everybody in this room, they're probably going to have concerns on all the questions that are inside of there. That's what I would like to see answered. And it's fine if you want to use the auditing, mechanism that's in place. Why not have an independent auditor actually come through separately and verify that the information matches? Because right now I think the biggest issue is, like it's already been expressed, trust is gone. There's no trust left. You have to earn that back. You're climbing Mount Everest right now. And what we're begging you is to join us, assist us in that process so that we can actually get back to a place where we trust the state and our local governments and everything else. Because right now, I agree, there's no 2022. There's no election moving forward.
And I mean, anybody listening or hearing us, it's not that we want to overturn the election. It's not that we want, to force a different outcome. We want to find the truth. And so like this is being videotaped and people are going to pass it around. And we just want to convey to you and to the legislature that we want to find the truth because it all smells and we don't trust. And I mean, we haven't trusted for a long time. This has been a long haul with COVID. And we're all concerned with our Constitution, and we're concerned with losing rights. And when we lost our voting system, and we lost the faith in our voting system, and we saw that who we want elected and who we vote for is not who actually is, the ballot's not cast for them.
That includes our governor.
So that, makes it even worse because we have no trust now. I mean, everybody violated our trust with COVID, and the legislator let the governor do it. You guys could have filed court papers sooner, put pressure on the Supreme Court to hear things. We did that in May. I understand, but we were left to struggle, and then the election was basically the straw that broke the camel's back, and we can't go on. we have to have this fixed. And Nick and I are both on the Republican GOP, Racine County Election Audit Committee. And we've been looking into this, and it all smells. And you have to help us get the trust back, because every person in here loves our country. And I think we love our state, we love the city that we live in, and we want life back, but the life that we imagine in our dreams, not the one that we currently have. And so we're asking you to take that back to the legislature and tell them that they have crushed the people of Wisconsin. And I'm going to say all of America.
Well, let's just pause right there. The legislature hasn't crushed the people of Wisconsin.
Well,
that's not fair, right? We are fighting.
The legislature, our government, our government, so all three branches has crushed.
Yep. Yes, I will put it this way.
Yeah.
I know I spoke out very frustrated. I would not want to be in your shoes.
Thank you.
Just truthfully speaking, I would not want to be in his shoes. I would not have to face the assault that has happened both federally and statewide. Those things were planned months and months and months and months and months ago. All I'm saying is, you all now, it has been thrown on you to be the ones to stand up and begin to shout out, this is against our Constitution, this is against what is right, what is just, and start shouting down those who would tell us that we're misinformation. We are not misinformation. Misinformation has been pouring out of Washington and out of the state for decades. We are not misinformation. They are misinformation. And they have pushed this thing to a breaking point by not coming out and shouting this misinformation, true misinformation down. These folks want honesty, openness, and transparency. Good folks. Why isn't the Republican Party working with these guys? As a whole, I can tell you why. Because we are more concerned with the reputation and whether or not we can get enough votes than we are concerned for the truth.
No, the Republican Party at the state level has an election integrity task force. I talked to them.
I will ask one question along those lines.
Yeah.
Does the city of Racine have a young Republicans group?
You have to ask the people who are on the GOP board. I don't know.
The answer is
Why don't you?
no, they
There's not
don't.
many. You
There's
should
not
be.
many,
No.
and it was shut down 3 years ago. From what I was told, and that's what I would like to know.
Who shut it down?
No younger group, no younger group, no future. I'm just telling you, my understanding is the Republican Party has left and abandoned the southeastern part of Wisconsin to the Democrats.
That is not true.
I'm
Once
just
again,
telling
I don't
you.
represent the city of Racine, so I
We
can only
have
tell
a
you
mayor
what.
in this city, if the Republican Party is truly standing up for the people and constituents of this city, then why have they sat quietly by while the mayor of this city has consolidated his power to the point that all legislation in this city must flow through his desk?
So let's take a step back, okay?
That would be great.
Every municipal leader is elected and accountable to the people who live in that municipality, right? If you don't live in the village of Rochester, the president of the village of Rochester might be nice to you, but he is not as responsible if you don't vote for him or him. You don't vote for him. Same in the city of Racine. Corey Mason shouldn't be the mayor. I agree with you, right? But I don't live in the city of Racine, right? I mean, I don't live in the city. That's up to the voters who live here. I mean, I'm sure many of you probably have gone door to door, right, for a candidate. I'm sure many of you have donated money to a candidate, put up a yard sign. I mean, that's how democracy changes, right? That's how you win elections. You have to go out and talk to people.
We have to trust our elected.
Democracy means
Right.
check,
We don't
if
trust
laws
them.
are not followed and held accountable.
But now, how many of you have been on the board of canvas? Any of you ever been to a board of canvas? Okay, that's when they actually take the results of the election and it's certified by the officials who live in that municipality, where they either, sometimes if it's requested, they'll do a hand count. If there's a discrepancy, they go in and look at all the ballots to say why were the ballots off by this number or correct by that number. So all of you, where you live, can be part of that process, right? That's the current law. It doesn't require any change whatsoever. The whole process is predicated on that at every single polling place, there's a Republican and a Democrat to ensure that, yes, people have to show their photo ID, because the Republican poll worker will make sure that happens. Yes, everybody should be given the right to vote. Both people should be fighting for that, right? That's the law today. So we need poll workers to be at every single polling place on election day, not people complaining afterward, saying, I wish people would have done something on election day.
There was a problem with that because we did speak to Wendy about that, and she said the law is if you pick one from the Republican, you have to pick one from the Democrat. They didn't pick from either.
Correct. Right.
So it's like, yeah, we can go to the Republican Party, sign up to be a poll worker, but they can just, you know, not use our list.
You'd have to ask Wendy this question, but it's my understanding that they are required to request a list for each political party for poll workers.
Yes.
And they are supposed to use that list.
Yes.
If they choose to ignore it, they are not following the law.
What do we do then if the city proceeds to
You
stop
go to the
following?
district attorney, right? You can file a complaint. Well, or,
I'm
hey,
serious,
Chris
though.
Hansen does a good job, and I'll tell you, so does Sheriff Schmaling, right? You go to Sheriff Schmaling, you file a complaint. He investigates it, he refers it to the district attorney.
You know,
Right,
look
that's
at
the way the process works.
Commissioner Rowe. I mean, you've got a whole group of people here that knows the corruption, and that's what's made us all not trust what's going on, is the corruption. It smells. I mean, it reeks. You can't get past it.
Again, I don't represent the city, right? My job is at the state level, right? Yes.
I just want to say a general thing, and I understand you're trying to get through that list.
That's okay.
But you got to understand, the sentiment of this room is all about what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Now look, I'm not a Democrat or Republican. I'm for the one that most holds my worldview. And that means that I never voted for a Democrat in my life. Because I'm a devout Christian man. And getting back to what this gentleman said, you ain't got a leg to stand on, quit trying to defend yourself, because it ain't gonna work. It ain't gonna work, we're over it. What we need is just what he said. You need to defy tyrants and start demanding our rights.
Demanding the residents.
Because you do represent us.
Counties fall.
They represent 57,000 people.
That's correct, and
Yeah.
you're about a half a mile, I'm a half a mile out of your district. Okay?
You're also a leader.
I'm in Spring Prairie, does that tell you anything?
Sure. Yeah.
All right? I'm here because I care, because I've got 7 grandchildren, and I've got 3 children. And they're all married, and they all have spouses, and they're all an asset to this community, to this government, to this United States, and to the state of Wisconsin. This man said it all. You have to start saying no more federal money, too. That's how all this corruption starts.
So, but this is the difference though, okay?
Everybody's getting paid, and we're sick of it.
I don't disagree with that.
And I'm sorry to raise my voice. I'm passionate.
I know people are frustrated, but the difference is, you know, my favorite president, or my second favorite president, is Ronald Reagan, okay? One of the things that he always said, somebody's with you 80% of the time is your friend, not your enemy. Most people who are Republican legislators are with you 99.9% of the time.
I agree.
So being frustrated with people who are with you almost 100%
I'm
of
not
the time.
frustrated with you.
I'm just saying,
But we have, the buck has to stop somewhere.
Yeah.
And we're to the point where, you know what, we're gonna, I hate to say this, but at some point, it's gotta get fixed.
I will say,
And peacefully, we're trying to.
Right, I think state government in Wisconsin does a pretty darn good job vis-a-vis the rest of the country.
As long as we keep taking federal money and it keeps getting funneled down, because I was told by my county clerk, oh, it's a state law, we have to have electronic voting equipment because we're over 10,000.
Yeah, municipality
Any
over
municipality over,
7,500.
yeah, their federal is 10,000.
I think that's federal law under HOBA, I don't think that's state law.
Well, then push back, defy tyrants, because it starts at the local level.
I mean, all of the power is vested within us, the individual person, you know what I mean?
Through our government.
No, the power,
it's the
power
consent
starts with the consent, right? So
we're not consenting anymore.
Right, we're no longer consenting. We're withdrawing our consent per the Constitution because it gives us that right, and the Constitution, sir, gives us the right to abolish and alter such tyrannical government. Well, if this ain't tyrannical, I don't know what is. And we can alter it and abolish it legally and peacefully because we have the Constitution. It acts as a double-edged sword. So, you know, I mean, there's thousands of, I mean, hundreds of thousands, millions of people that are no longer putting up with this. You know what I mean? And you guys are nothing more than a bond servant to us. That's what you are. You know, I mean,
To my constituents, that's correct.
And we thank you for
And,
that.
yeah, and we get that. We get that.
But as Speaker of the House, you have broad powers.
You're the
amongst more
mouthpiece, man.
constituents than just the individuals in your group. You have much broader powers. And what this group is telling you, because of those broader powers, not because of just your so many constituents that you answer for to get your vote. By the way, just a heads up, people in this room represent votes. And more votes than beyond just this room. So along those lines, what we're saying is we want you as Speaker of the House to go back with a fire lit underneath you and begin to light things up and use every lever you can to begin to light the rest of them up. And if you say you're the leader that you say you are, here saying I did this and I did this and I did this, light a fire under the rest of them. Let them know there are people behind them that will back them up, that will stand up and say something. When the backbone of one stiffens, many others rise up.
Yeah, man, stir the pot, the crap will rise. I mean, it truly will. You know what I mean? And the people sent you affidavits, sir. They did, right? And those affidavits were specific. This is a notice and a demand, not a request. We're not begging. I'm sorry, but the American people don't beg. Nor do we retreat. We break content. Okay? So they demanded a full forensic audit, process to be started and completed without delay by an independent firm following the guidelines of the Maricopa County, Arizona Audit 2021. Now, you didn't respond to these affiants, the I don't know, hundreds, probably a few thousand that you've received by now. You haven't responded within the 72-hour deadline in these affidavits. So therefore, you're essentially acquiescing, saying, yes, we have.
That's correct.
Right. That has nothing to do with the governor.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with the governor.
Right.
With the Electoral College, it's purely the legislature.
Correct.
Yes.
Every state, again, is different.
That's where I was going.
No, that's in the Constitution.
No. Every state is different, okay? So our state legislature, back in, I don't even know how long ago, way before I was elected, probably before I was born, ceded the authority to choose the electors to the Elections Commission, right? And the votes that are tabulated by each county. So
That's where I was going.
we don't have the ability under law. If we wanted to change that, we'd have to pass a law, have Governor Evers sign it, and change the process.
Plenary power granted by the Constitution means you have the right to give that to the Wisconsin Election Commission,
Correct.
but you also have the right to take it back.
Agreed. That's true.
At any time, you don't need the governor.
No, we do need the governor.
This is this constitutional question, and I'd like to see the Republican Party take that case to the U.S., the Supreme Court in the state of Wisconsin. Because if you guys have the ability to take this election back, you can fix it, boom.
But just ask yourself, I don't want the legislature to substitute itself for the electorate, or the electorate. What if we have a Democrat state legislature and Donald Trump won the election? I would not want the Democrat legislature to say he didn't deserve it, we're going to give it to Joe Biden.
I'm saying there's corruption in multiple counties in Wisconsin. There's corruption. And Wisconsin Election Commission is not doing anything about it. They let the 200,000 ballots go out there. There were ballots sloshing around everywhere. And just because we counted what came back doesn't mean we wound up with the right number. Because there's a lot of illegal ballots in that pile. That's my concern.
I understand that. That's valid.
So the legislature has the ability, and in Wisconsin, we put the Republican Party in charge of the legislature to go back, go in and fix it, figure it out. Okay? And if it takes a court challenge at the Supreme Court, great. Who's the Republican that's going to stand up and get that done? And they're going to be a hero in this whole nation.
I hear what you're saying. I just don't agree with the idea that we're going to substitute ourselves for the 5.5 million people who vote for the president or Congress or the Attorney General.
I'm
or
not
whatever.
suggesting that's not what I'm saying. The legislature takes back the control over the elections and dictates it.
Yeah.
You guys could say no voting machines, done, all paper ballots. If you took the power back,
Well,
Who votes the Wisconsin Election Commissions into office?
Nobody, they're appointed.
Who are they appointed by?
I appoint one person.
You appoint one person,
Yep.
who else appoints one
The
person?
majority leader of the Senate.
You just said you didn't want to take away your rights of 5 million people's
Yep.
votes. But yet you have the power to vote one of those people on the Wisconsin Election Commission. What he's saying is, why doesn't the legislature exert the Constitution and take that power back so that it rests in the representation of the people rather than in the appointees?
Yes.
By the ladies? If you disagree with that, then my friend, respectfully, that's the Constitution. That's the high law of the land. That's why everybody's worked up. That has been broken time and time and time and time again. And my dear friend, in your own words, you don't want to pull those levers.
I do not want to substitute
You
the
don't
will
want
of
to
the people.
substitute, but you have a vote.
We're not asking you to substitute the will of the people, we're asking you to determine what it really is.
Oh, that's different. That's why we're doing the investigation. I agree with that. I agree with that.
Open above board, everybody looks at it,
Yep.
everybody sees it,
Yep.
and some Republican in the state of Wisconsin could say, no more voting machines until we get all of this cleaned up. They could say that. The legislature has the power.
I think it would have to be signed by the governor. I don't think we have unilateral.
Take it back and forth in the
Let the Supreme Court decide.
Right, exactly.
Let the Supreme Court
Democrats just take power, why don't we take it back
They
and put
exert
them
the
in
power,
court?
they wait for you guys to
Well, we do
spend
that.
a year.
We do that all the
judicial
time.
process.
Can I ask,
that's not
ask
fair.
a question?
Yeah.
It's been on my mind. Now, I've heard people say publicly that Wisconsin had a second set of electors go to DC. Is that true or false?
There was a second set of electors chosen. That's true.
Okay, so why in the world can't we disqualify what was sent?
Because again, under the law, we do not have the ability as the legislature to disqualify those. But,
That's like me saying, okay, I'm going to give you my word that this is true and appropriate and it has integrity and you can trust it, you can take it as gospel, like the word of God, and then be able to prove that it's corrupted and then say, oh, but that doesn't matter. It's because I said it was appropriate and I said it was true and I said it was the word of God, therefore it is. You know how ridiculous and stupid that sounds? And I'm not asserting that to you, sir, but that is the most foolish argument I've ever heard in my life. That does not follow any logic. That's not linear thinking, and it's if I go to Potawatomi and declare bingo and they check my card and it's not a bingo, dude, I don't get to walk out with the prize. This is stuff that we learn in kindergarten, Mr. Boss.
Okay.
Somehow we got to understand that this is our lives going forward. There's no way I can go back in to vote for anything and be rest assured that it's going to be correct or my vote even counts anymore.
And this ain't just Republicans either, man. This is Democrats all over the place.
This is American.
Exactly, because this transcends party lines, and that's what it is. We have come to learn that it's a uniparty that's controlling this nation and controlling nations in general. Well, who controls the nations? Who controls presidents? Is it international bankers? Is it cartels and transnational criminal organizations? Because that's what I'm starting to understand.
Thank you for taking the time to listen. I'm not going to keep debating about international conspiracy theories.
Why is it a conspiracy theory, sir? Why don't you prove wrong to me? Why don't you prove to me that what I'm saying is incorrect, since you seem to have all the answers?
I'm not going to prove a negative, right?
What does that even mean? You're not going to prove a negative.
Okay, so move on now. If anybody has any other questions,
Foolishness.
especially if you live in my district, I call every constituent back. So please, if you have questions, if you want to talk about it, I am more than happy to discuss any of these topics. But the one thing I would say in the end is you have to judge us by results, right? So, I mean, I hear the frustration. I understand that people want something to be done. We are doing more than any other state. By the end, you watch, right? We've got 2 separate investigations. We have actual auditors doing it. We've hired Justice Gableman and giving him a very generous budget to hire people who are professionals to ensure that at the end, we have the most comprehensive most complete product that we possibly can to show the people of Wisconsin what actually occurred in 2020.
How do you get in touch with those investigators?
You can actually go on, I believe Justice Gateman's website is wifraud.com, but don't quote me on that. You can just Google it. But I believe he is taking every single report that people give him, again, from things that happen in Wisconsin, not what you saw on TV in Georgia or Alabama or wherever else. Only things that happen in Wisconsin, because that's what we're investigating.
Are they only doing the presidents, or are they also doing like the mayors and
No,
that
they're
kind of
only,
stuff?
well, because don't forget, mayors and members of the county board, city council, and all that, they're elected in April. People who are elected on a partisan basis, legislature, state senate, U.S. Senate, Congress, president, they're in November. So they're only looking at the November election.
So would that be Evers?
Evers was in 2018.
Oh, okay.
2018.
Do we know why it's in the spring versus like the other states are in the fall? I mean, we're one of the few that have those
Partisan versus
in the spring.
Yeah, it's exactly, it's partisan versus nonpartisan. So that was decided, you know, statehood, basically. That they elect people for local government who are nonpartisan. You know, even though they have a partisan leaning, they don't run on a ticket. People who run in the fall run on a ticket. That's right.
Hey, so Mr. Voss, can you supply Hot Government with the contacts that Mr. Gableman or any of the other investigators would use? Can you give us an email? We can then distribute and disseminate those.
Yep.
So if anybody wants to actually have some information concerning the elections that they'd like to share with the investigators.
And the one thing I'll say here is they need eyewitness accounts, right? They don't need, I heard from 3 people deep this happened. They need, I saw this,
What about
or,
emails?
pardon me?
About emails, contracts, all the rest of that stuff.
Anything that you have, I mean, he'll take it all, but I'm just saying that we have a lot of people who are reporting things saying, I heard this happened somewhere else. Well, we need to know who is the person you heard it from and where did they hear it from to get to the source.
So let me go one step further for all the people here then. If you're going to provide the investigators with any type of knowledge that you have, I highly suggest you also supply an affidavit. So they're going to know who, when, where, what, how, why. And if you supply it with an affidavit, and we will get these emails, this email sites or wherever we're going to provide it, I would suggest that you do provide an affidavit with it then.
Wait a second, I might have the address. Let me just make sure.
Okay, well, you can just send it to us later.
Just real quick, I know it's been heated in here.
That's okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Rob, thank you.
Oh, I don't mind.
You showed up. You showed up.
I didn't think you were going to show up. I didn't. Thank you. Thank you for showing up.
No offense, you recall during that
There you go,
Thank you so much. But seriously, I mean this in the nicest way. You guys are marshmallows, right? I mean, when you go against the Democrats and you go against people who are screaming in your face because of Act 10, when you have illegal immigrants protesting in your front lawn, putting a coffin out there because you're killing people, right? That's the things that actually make me angry. You guys, I know you all love our country. You might disagree a little bit on tactics, but at the end of the day, we are there fighting for you. I mean,
And that's what
you
we
might
want
not-
as a fight. We
right.
just want you to fight.
You might
for
not
us.
see it, but remember, just because you don't see it on Facebook or just because you don't see it in the newspaper, doesn't mean people aren't working their heart out to try to do the right thing.
Help us see it.
Yeah, we will
Help us
try.
see it.
But again, it's very difficult, right? Because we only have so many sources. I mean, how many of you saw that do any of you know, before I said them tonight, what the 6 bills were that we sent to Governor Evers?
Yeah.
Right? A few people, I'm just saying. And we publicized those in every way that we possibly could for a month to try to get it out.
Are you on Facebook or
Oh yeah, it's on Facebook, it's on email, it's on social
Telegram
media.
channel. That's going to be the best.
Telegram, yeah, that's where most people are.
I'm just
A lot
saying,
of people drop
media where we just
Facebook
get
and
banned.
stuff.
yeah, I mean, we try to do all that. I'm just saying, help us. We're trying to get the word out, and it's frustrating to us too because we are doing a lot of these things, and people say you're not doing it.
Well, you should create a Telegram channel.
Yeah.
We're working on it.
Or better yet, just send us what you're doing and we'll disseminate it through our Telegram channel.
Sure.
I would like to thank Speaker Voss for coming here tonight. This is a result of our once every 4-year breakfast that we had some time ago when I asked if he would come and speak to our hot government group, and he graciously agreed to do so. And the reason I asked him was because we had a lot of back and forth about election integrity. And something that Robin said to me that I'm hoping he'll reiterate to you is how important the governor's race is coming up. And I kind of poo-pooed that, but Robin did remind me, and it's been at the forefront of my brain ever since, how important it is, because the legislature can work and put these bills on the governor's desk, but unless we have a governor that's willing to sign those bills, we're never going to have election integrity. And I appreciate.
That's true.
Yeah, and
Which is why, for those of you who believe that states should be where most of the action is, that's what I do. It's why I'm not running for any other office. I want states to be the preeminent place where we get to decide things. If you have the wrong governor, nothing else.
So you endorsing anyone?
You're really worried about the election.
Oh, I get it. I'm just saying, but it's a combination of all.
And I know people in this area that live in Racine, I know there's a lot of Republican women stopped doing polls because they were being bullied so bad throughout the years. So this is the biggest probably thing that I've learned, and my husband's a police officer here in Racine, is we have to stop being scared. Like, you have to like fight fire with fire, and you have to demand, just like they want to demand, you just have to demand, and we have to get more people involved. People are uneducated in this area. They have no idea. So now you know what, I see people every day, I'm a nurse. I educate people as much as I can because they have no idea. They have no idea. I'm like, be a poll worker, they're like, I can't. I'm like, absolutely you can. Find out. People just don't know.
Just one last thing, because I didn't talk about some of the mandates that you mentioned, and I do have to go. Regarding the mandates for vaccines, the mandates for masks and all those things, okay? We passed a bill that said that you cannot mandate folks to take vaccines, okay? Governor Evers vetoed that, right? Now, I will be honest, I am vaccinated, my wife is not. Okay, she would chew off her fingers before she decided to get a vaccine. Okay,
good for her.
I made a different choice, and that's what it should be about. Right? Everybody should have their own choice, and they get to make their own decision. Okay, one of my biggest fears. Now, we also passed legislation saying that an employer cannot mandate that somebody has to have a vaccine in order to work at their place of business. Okay, that passed the Assembly. It did not pass the Republican-controlled state Senate. Okay. Now, so you need to reach out to your Republican senators. This is important. Now, again, I believe Governor Evers will probably veto it, right? But it's still the right thing to do because, again, I'm an employer. My employees have the right to wear a mask every day if they want to. They have a right to get the vaccine if they want to. But I never, in my wildest dreams, would ever force anybody to get the vaccine. So these are issues where you can have an actual impact today, right? I mean, this is something where you can talk to your legislators, ask them what's happening. This is something that, again, I'm hopeful, especially in healthcare, that's what made me think of it, because I have talked to so many nurses. I talked to 2 last night on my drive home, both who work in Burlington, and they're being told, I think it's October 15th, I don't remember the exact date. I can't remember what it is, but they had said they're going to be required. And they are very worried that a large number of nurses are not going to go to work, and we're going to have a severe nurse shortage.
That's exactly what they should be.
Right. I'm just saying, that's the right of individuals to make their own choice.
Is there any effort yet to look into keeping insurers and healthcare providers from requiring it? Because already there are rumblings of, oh, well, just like we charge people who smoke a little extra, if you don't get the virus or the vaccine, we'll go ahead and set it $200 more a month.
Or they'll deny you.
Yep, I mean, a valid point again. I guess I'm trying to make the easiest case, which I think is choice for your employer. I think that's the best one to convince the public, right? We certainly can talk about that too, but that is not my knowledge that that's happening.
One bill doesn't make it.
But there's no
We can try
informed,
it.
there isn't informed consent, and that's the problem. Nobody knows. Nobody's looking at the VAERS website on how many deaths there have been. There's a lawsuit right now filed by Attorney Rents out of the state of Alabama. 45 CDC whistleblower came forward and said, based on the data that she sees, 45,000 people died within 3 days of getting the vaccine. That is nowhere on the news. Our news is not covering anything about they're not covering any adverse reaction. People are posting videos of the blood clots. They're posting videos of the Bell's palsy that they're having. There's over 500,000 severe adverse reactions logged in the VAERS website. And there is no informed consent. The only thing that the public is getting is the lies that the media is telling. And I can tell you that so many people would never even get the vaccine if they knew all of the injuries that are occurring as a result of this. And something has to be done because these decisions are being made because nobody has any other source than the lying media. And nobody's talking about this, and it's just sickening. There are a lot of people are going to be the numbers of deaths that we're going to be seeing within the next 3 years is going to be unbelievable.
In my mind, it all comes down to free choice, right? That's what it is. I mean, I am not going to stand up and say the vaccines are great, even though I think, you know, as a person who's vaccinated, I think that for certain populations it makes a lot of sense. But I'm also never going to mandate.
Yeah.
That's what it really comes down to. So people can believe what they believe, but it should really be about
But
choice.
the problem is the censorship of information.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
We're
people
being
can't get
silenced,
the
yeah.
information because it's being censored.
That's why we have to educate people. We have to educate people.
Yep.
But then they look at you and they think that you're crazy because they didn't hear it, and Facebook says that, oh, it's a fact checkers.
The liberals want
Yeah, yeah.
One at a time, please, one at a time.
That bill number?
I don't remember. I'm sorry, I don't remember.
Can't remember.
I apologize. You can just look it up. I mean, it was authored by, I think it was authored by Tyler August, but I don't remember for sure.
Senate Bill 5.
Yeah. Is it SB 5? I don't think that's right.
Is 25 for Assembly Bill and 5 for...
Is that what it is? Okay.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
For
Thank you.
Senate.
That's good.
You know, another thing that was passed and the governor did sign was something giving corporations immunity to any liability arising from having their employees vaccinated. Originally, my understanding is that was packaged with the employees not being required to take it, and it was separated, and then that part was through, and the governor signed it. So businesses now have some degree of immunity.
So if you remember way back, again, this seems like ancient history, back in January, the Senate negotiated a bill with Governor Evers dealing with a bunch of COVID things, okay? The Assembly inserted the language you're talking about, where we fought super hard to be able to have that language in there, because I fundamentally don't believe in these vaccine mandates, okay? We lost. So we passed that bill, Governor Evers vetoed it. Okay, we won the fight with the Senate. Governor Evers vetoed the bill. So we passed the rest of the bill, which is to say that you can't have trial lawyers going around and suing people based on anything dealing with COVID. Right? We wanted to make sure employers were protected, so when they brought their employees back, they wouldn't be sued because somebody got sick at work and they now have 50 people who are quarantined now. So
That's just great, but on the flip side of that law that got passed is now, if once the mandates are forced upon the American people, that protects the employer to mandate the employee, and then if they get sick from the shot, they can't turn around and sue the employer for forcing them to take the shot.
I believe, but I think that's federal law. And I don't think that's state law.
You worded it so that lawyers can't go around suing employers for anything regarding COVID.
I thought that was federal, but you could be right. I'd have to look at that.
Because, I mean, that's a real simple way to fix it. If you force the mandates on people and they get sick from it, they can sue the pants off of you and own your company. And immediately, a lot of employers can back off from that real fast because they don't want to risk their life. And I thought it was in the HIPAA laws that you weren't supposed to be able to, you weren't required to share your information anyways. My own wife can get sick, and unless she signs a consent form, I can't get information about my wife. Which is ridiculous, and that's true.
You might know, I'm not an expert on HIPAA, but it's my understanding it only impacts healthcare
So how can the
providers.
federal government demand you to violate a law that they've already established?
Last question.
Okay,
Open records, you didn't talk about.
All right, 2 more questions. How's that? Thank you.
Okay, I'm here representing the Rise Up Wisconsin movement, and Sheriff Clark's been trying to call your office. He tried 3 times this week to get a hold of you.
Here's my cell phone number.
Okay, I'll tell him to use that. Okay.
Yeah.
He wants to offer, he's running Mark Belling's show tomorrow from 3 to 6. He would like you to come on to the show and discuss things with him. Time frame would be at your convenience.
I'm not interested in that. When he spends all of his time going after me personally, I mean, I am willing to have a civil conversation with anybody, anytime, anywhere, as I did tonight. But I'm not going to do it when people call me names and do all that kind of stuff. They kind of lose me there. Sorry. Your last question.
Open records, about putting a time frame.
Yeah, I think that's a good. I'm certainly open to that. I mean, I agree with you. Once again, the vast majority of people, especially at the state and local level, do a good job with open records.
Yeah, but this
not
way,
everybody.
it's in the law, black and white, you gotta turn it over. I've been waiting 16 months from the city of Racine, the city of Milwaukee, and the city of Madison to respond to my open records request regarding the election.
Isn't there already a cause of action that you can?
Well, there's going to be tomorrow. Harry is having a press conference. There's going to be a lawsuit.
Yeah.
You know, but there's absolutely no reason why there shouldn't be a response to it.
Yeah, timeline. I don't disagree with that. Yeah.
Well,
like I say, we follow that.
It's great to hear you don't disagree with it, and it'd even be better to hear that you're going to investigate it and do a comparative study between Wisconsin and the 49 other states, and I'll guarantee you that Wisconsin is at the bottom. And if you really want people to trust government, you have transparency.
But there also not only has to be a timeline, but there has to be a consequence for the person that violates the law. Sometimes they violate the law and there's absolutely no consequence. So it's like, I'm gonna cross that line and I'm gonna violate this law. What are you gonna do to me?
Yeah, monetary penalty.
I mean, there has to be a penalty for people in government that violate the law.
Well, then, yeah, because people in government will use taxpayer money to pay the bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the catch-22 that we're in with public records. But I think if you would be willing to talk with some of these people, maybe later, where we would actually maybe work with possibly even forming some type of committee to look at that, would you be willing to do that with some of us?
First of all, I'd like to see what other places do. I think that's a good suggestion. Okay.
So we've got some talented people here that can supply a lot of information.
Well, and I'm actually president of so there is one organization that represents all 7,500 state legislators across the country. I'm actually president of that. They have 250 employees. They do the research comparing states. So I can ask, it's all NCSL. I can ask NCSL.
Yeah. We can do some research. Yeah, we'll contact you then about that. So.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ross.
All right.
Okay, we're going to add, thank you.
It was nice.
Nice to meet you.
Robin, thanks for coming. You're welcome. The agenda here.
Pleasure to meet you very much. Nice to meet you.
But we're going to ask Mr. Jay Stone just